We're back and we're talking today about Cod's incredible drydocking experience. We were in Drydock 2021. You remember that?
I do.
And John was our transportation captain. Our dry dock was 105 miles away, and we needed to get up and back. And John, you had a 25 passenger van or something?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Something like that. But the whole dry docking thing was triggered by John's discovery of the hole. A 7mm hole worked its way through ballast tank 2B, and that was 2019.
I think it was.
Yeah, I mean, it was 2 years before we went to dry dock.
Yeah.
As I recall, you were you were new to the crew, and we were down here for our Saturday inspection.
True.
Because at that time, we weren't open in the dead of winter.
What I'd like to talk to you about is the importance of maintenance and inspections. So a couple years ago, at that time we were closing throughout the winter. I was sitting home and I was getting anxious to want to work on the boat, do something with the boat. So I called the president, Paul Ferrace, and said, is there anything we can do? I got to be down by the boat. I want to do something. He said, yeah, let's go give it an inspection. Our inspection included, you walk the deck and the rails, and you check the outer part, you check all of the materials, make sure we don't have no leaks, we don't have no cracks, no nothing. And then you watch the water and look for bubbles, look for discoloring of the water in case any oil or fuel is leaking. So after I came around to the stern and back up, about right here I got, and I noticed strange bubbles coming up. They would come up for a while, then they'd stop. Then they'd come up for a while, they'd stop. I thought, okay, something's wrong. I called Paul, the president. He came over, and when we looked down on the side of her tank here, we noticed it was about an inch or two below the water, and it was coming out of the boat.
Hi everybody, Cod Curator Evan here. I wanted to draw your attention to a project we've been working on. It's a YouTube channel called The Wandering Curator, which will include stories that are cool, but beyond the scope of the USS Cod YouTube channel. We will discuss a variety of topics, including military history, Cleveland stories, and maybe even a tale about a murder or two. We now return to your regularly scheduled broadcast.
As I recall, you said, hey, I think we got a leak.
Yeah.
And what did I tell you?
No,
I poo-pooed, and I said, it can't be a leak. And you said, well, there's bubbles. I poo-pooed it because, just because. But anyway, so I said, well, let me go look. And I came over here, and it was like right about here, 2B. And do you remember what I said?
Well, when we got down there, I went and looked, and you went, I don't know. I says, it's coming out of the hole.
As I recall, it was a little more dramatic. And I'm a dramatic guy. I said, holy expletive deleted. Oh my God, that's a hole.
And then we called our main chief of maintenance, Daryl, and then we called Al Winkler, our two top men. They came in, they looked it over. It was not a serious situation. We weren't going to sink. Everything was fine, but we were getting a trickle in. That was fixed. Well, while they came in and worked on that, Paul and I started at the forward torpedo room, pulling up some of the plates and the flooring, and went down in what we call the basement, checked every bilge, every nook and cranny, all the way through the boat. She was bone dry. She was doing good. We felt good. We spent the whole day down here, and that's what we're for. That's what the crew's for. Very dedicated, very loyal, and the boat is in the condition she is because of that kind of action. So,
yeah. And as I remember, I ran around with my pants on fire about 4 revolutions right here, and you kind of watch. And then I stopped and I said, okay, we gotta work the problem. Failure's not an option.
Didn't you put the pencil in there, the hole, or was that?
No, it wasn't a pencil. But I did say, I said, look, it was a day. It was in, I think, March.
Cold.
It was a cold day, but it was warm, sunny, and so I said, let's do a little experiment. I went and took the ear plugs that we use for the gun crew, and I stuck with it. By the way, did I mention that God was on our side? The hole was about 5 inches under the water, literally adjacent to one of our fender tires.
Yeah.
And so I was able to just squeeze this little foam rubber pill thing and shove it in, and it stopped any water in or out or air. And I said, let's go to lunch, and if I'm correct, as the sun warms up the air in the ballast tank, it'll spit it out. And I remember we came back from lunch, because you know the first thing you want to do in any crisis is go to lunch. And sure enough, the little earplug thing was floating, and I said, well, you know, we have got to get going now. This is the first sign, this is the trigger. We are going to dry dock. And I didn't realize it'd be taking 2 years, but you know, we had to line up a bunch of ducks and a few cats, had to herd some cats. But ultimately the solution, the temporary solution, the initial temporary solution was to get a wine cork. And my wife, I came home, I said, honey, I need to go through your wine corks collection, because she saves those. I don't know why. And I looked at the cork thing and I said, well, that's going to kind of crumble. And she said, no, you want a synthetic wine cork. So I whittled down a synthetic, and I came down here and I pushed that in, of that synthetic cork in the hole. Again, 7mm hole. Most of your wine corks are probably 20 millimeters in diameter. But anyway, that held from March until the water warmed up in June, that we could use Splash Zone. It's a 2-component underwater curing epoxy.
Yeah.
And most of the Hinza ships are afloat thanks to Splash Zone or other derivatives of it. But anyway, Jason Frank, our diver, who of course is a great member of the crew and the guy who created the million view plus video of us leaving for dry dock when we hit we were pulled into the Morro Bay anyway. He came down here, and as a diver, he was fully outfitted in his tanks and flippers, and he had his mask on. He says, okay, where do I apply the splash zone? And he's thinking maybe 5 feet under. I said, you kneel on the tire and reach in, and you got to get your hands wet. And he was all suited up. So he put some splash zone over that, and that held until we were in the dry dock. And in fact, they started cutting out some of the plates that were badly corroded. And I did say, because my wife asked me, I want my cork back so I can mount it on a mahogany plaque and say, I saved the cod.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in the shipyard, they didn't get the word, so they were kind of just
And threw it away.
scrapping. Yeah, oh well. And as I recall, I did warn everybody. I said, you know, this isn't the first hole we've ever had. And I said, and it certainly won't be the last. But you know what? In fact, it was. This girl held her integrity
You betcha.
for the next 2 years until we got her up on the blocks at Don John Shipyard. So we've got, we're going to do a couple programs on our dry docking, because our friends on USS Cobia are preparing to go to dry dock in September.
Oh, wow.
USS Kidd is in dry dock. I think Texas is going to be in dry dock for the next century. But anyway, you know, the chickens have come home to roost, and now is the time where it's put up or shut up. You know, get your boat into dry dock, get some repairs, or we're in trouble. So we were lucky we had the funding, and you were able to spot it. You know, at some point though, we did kind of take it out. We did an inclining experiment. You remember, we let the ballast tank 2B flood up to the waterline just to see how much of a list she took. 3-degree list. And then we put the plug back in there, and we used our powerful Blue Max pump. We dewatered that and brought her back up. But yeah, so you know, every bad thing is an opportunity to learn, and to learn just about what effect ballast tank floodings have on the boat. So, but anyway, we'll be talking about that more. Let's cut to something, whatever Evan's
Probably
throwing
time
in
for
here.
lunch.
Let's go to lunch.
If you want to hear more stories with John, then go to the Wandering Curator YouTube channel. We even have a story where he talks about burning down shithouses during the Vietnam War. Thanks again.
Let's
go.